Hey folks, welcome back to This is ADHD. As ever, I am your host, Chris Johnson. When I'm not wearing a fake mustache and pretending to be a podcaster, I work with people who are looking to make a change in their work, life, and relationships for the better. I am a combined type ADHD, and I was diagnosed about 5 months before this episode was recorded. I started this podcast as when I was diagnosed with ADHD, it felt like no one else had this disorder, and that overwhelming feeling of being alone just kind of left me reeling. I just didn't know what to do after diagnosis. In this podcast, I talk to people like you and me about what it means to be ADHD and how it shows up for them. I want to demystify and normalize ADHD, and show that whilst ADHD profoundly affects people and our lives, that we really are all different, and that one person's version of ADHD is just that, one person. I'm really excited about today's episode, and it feels fitting that we started the podcast at the start of ADHD Awareness Month, and we were talking about raising a neurodivergent family from the perspective of a parent. And now we're ending the month talking about the experience of being raised in a neurodivergent family. Today's guest is Jenn Kerr. We talk about understanding and adapting learning styles and how they can turn around an academic experience from something not great to something very, very positive. We also talk a lot about Jenn's late adoptive parents, how they were, even before ADHD was diagnosable in women, they were able to recognize the signs, and they were able to do their own research, and they became the advocates that Jenn needed in her life to get diagnosed and to get medicated early on. We talk about so much in this episode. It's all over the place. It's a real window into a life lived with ADHD. We talk about childhood, grief, employment, relationships, and so much more. I really learned a lot just from having this conversation. I hope you do as well. And I think it's really interesting because Jenn's journey is completely different to my own. And even with that, we still find that we have this overlap of experience, and we talk a lot about kind of this experience of a lifetime of the common events, but through that ADHD lens. And it's, really interesting, really connecting. And so if you're a person with ADHD, or you're here to kind of learn a bit more, Jenn's story is really going to challenge your perceptions and kind of leave you with a greater appreciation for that experience that ADHD encompasses. Today I am joined by Jenn Kerr from Ontario. She is a new friend of mine. She is a travel agent. She is 43, and we met on Threads. Hi Jenn, how are you doing?
Hey Chris, I'm good. How about you?
Hot, very hot, but also good.
That's good.
It's far too warm to be recording. So Jenn, thank you for coming on, first of all. What do you call your ADHD?
So I am technically the inattentive type of attention deficit. I call my form of ADD, though, a roller coaster. It's like so many highs, so many lows. It's super fast paced sometimes, and then other times you get stuck in a brake run. Sudden twists and turns, sudden stops and starts. That's kind of my brand of ADHD for myself.
Nice. I feel like my resonating there is like, yep, I've yet to describe my ADHD. It feels like yours and mine is very similar. And Jen, I know we spoke about this when we kind of did a pre-call as well. Like, would you mind kind of talking about like your journey from pre-ADHD to ADHD?
Sure, absolutely. So, back in the 80s, when ADHD was kind of a new thing, in a sense that boys were getting diagnosed with it all the time because they couldn't sit still in class or were running around and all that stuff. My brother was diagnosed in grade 1, and my mom started reading a bunch of attention deficit books like Driven to Distraction and, the standards back then. And she started cluing in that, maybe I had something kind of like my brother, but in a different form. What really triggered it for her was my inability in class to comprehend certain things. Or to be able to get my homework done and focus long enough to get work done. So I had a difficult year. My brother was in grade 1. I was in grade 4. I had a teacher who was dealing with a husband who had cancer at the time. And so she was still teaching because she needed to have funds coming into the family, clearly. And, but she was also dealing with this stress at home. And so we thought it was just her. We thought it was a personality thing at this point, just because she was dealing with a lot and I was very out there. But it was really the idea that they tested me because my homework wasn't getting done. I wasn't grasping fractions and, those kind of concepts in math. And they tested me and I tested at a genius level. So they're like, yeah, no, brain's not a problem. You get this. Like, there's no reason for you not to be doing the work and not to understand this stuff. And so it was basically my principal that said to my parents, like, I'm sorry, but your kid's a spoiled, rotten, lazy brat. Like, there's no reason for her not to do her work. And that was back in 1990. I still remember it to this day. Like, that's one of those things that resonates with me and actually will feed into my psyche every once in a while when I'm frustrated with something. It's like, no, you're just a spoiled, rotten, lazy brat. But it was, Mom started, at that point she was reading more and more and dealing with my brother who was on Ritalin. And so she decided, let's go to the pediatrician and let's see, because she had read something about the inattentive type of ADHD at that point, which was called hypoactive back in those days. It wasn't called the hyperactive. And so we went to the pediatrician and they put me on Ritalin and things started to improve. Not a lot, but things started to improve in the sense that I could focus a little bit more. And it wasn't until, so grade 5, we moved to a new school. We got out of that school. Can't imagine why. And so we got out of that school, moved to the new school, and I was on Ritalin twice a day at that point. And that's how we started really figuring out things for me and realizing that Ritalin was actually working. Rewind back to grade 2 and 3, just because this never comes up in the journey, but it's technically part of it. I had a teacher who invested in a bunch of the electoral boxes that you use at schools when people are going to vote. And she got a bunch of them for her classroom, and she started putting one of those around me during tests and everything, because otherwise I was looking around and daydreaming, which is classic inattentive ADHD. So she put me in this box.
There's accommodations, isn't there? And then there's that's like the opposite of accommodations, isn't it? It's like punishments.
It is.
Wow.
It is. And again, this was the 80s. So inattentive ADHD in girls, not something you ever saw or talked about, because girls didn't have attention deficit. It was a boy's disease.
Yeah. I think there's people who still think that to this day.
Oh God, yeah. All the time. I'm
Yeah.
sure of it.
Yeah. And so you were changing schools, you're on Ritalin twice a day, and then everything fine, hunky dory, lived a great life, right?
So after, kind of,
Yeah.
for the most part, yeah. I mean, I am one of those people that chronically suffered from foot and mouth disease in the sense that I blurt out stuff randomly.
Yeah.
So there would be stuff that would be said in class and people would look at me and go, "What planet are you from?" um Around this time I had discovered, like, I was already aware that I was adopted from a young age as a baby, but around this time I had somehow found my my documents for my adoption. So I found my actual birth name, and it was Olivia. And for some reason, don't ask me why, I decided to tell my friends, "Oh, my name was Olivia Newton-John." Don't know why, but
The choices we make.
I know. That was my birth name. Oh, I was Olivia Newton-John at birth. Yeah,
Wow.
I was so proud of that moment.
Yeah. I can feel the emotions. They're still with you. That's a choice that you're not going to
Oh,
be able
yeah.
to take back in.
Yep. Yep. So, a lot of, for me, my journey then began, like, my grade school here in Canada. Most grade schools don't start you learning about exams. You don't deal with that until you get to high school. Our grade school took a different approach. They decided that they felt it fair that grade 7 and 8s kind of learned what an exam cycle is going to be like in high school so we could prepare for it. And that's when we really discovered that testing was not my thing. I couldn't write essay questions for the life of me. So we started, trying to figure out how to piece together those things. And it still was tricky, but it worked in a sense. But it wasn't until grade 10 that we really discovered my learning habits. It was grade 10 history, to be exact. And my dad, who is quite a brilliant metallurgical engineer here in Ontario, he has done presentations all over the world. He has a patent in the US. I actually have it at my house, because he invented certain roll technology for steelmaking. He started thinking maybe that I was a visual learner instead of an actual write it down and that. So he started drawing diagrams for history classes. So the whole Cold War, the idea that the planes might fly over the Arctic Circle and come into the US and fly over Canada. And to this day, I still picture those pictures when I'm thinking about the Cold War and everything, because that's what stuck with me.
It's
But
almost that kind of
around,
like ground up. Sorry.
yeah, no, it is. It's almost like ground up in the sense that we were learning about visual learning in a sense, and figuring out what worked for me. They also started putting me in separate offices during exam time. So, I mean, it wasn't horrible, and I got my exam done. Usually, I don't know about you, but I was a person that could write my exams in about 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. My exam was done in 30 minutes. Like, as soon as that 30-minute bell was that, I was gone. Like, so now,
I
yeah, let's go. Get me out of here. Like, yeah, I was the same way. Like, everyone else in my class, we had like 2.5 hours to write our exam. Everyone else in our class was there for an hour and a half. I was sitting in the lobby at a half hour, like, okay, can I go home now? Like, let me leave. Yeah. So when I was about 16, we started working on the thought that I needed a mood disorder, or like I needed a specialist. And my parents took me to a mood disorder specialist who was well known within our church community at the time. And that's great. You know, he was a fantastic guy. I liked working with him, and he understood the goal was to get me to a university, and so I could pursue certain things like music education. And I mean, we eventually got there. But part of the problem with him was he was more of a mood disorder specialist than an ADHD specialist. So his first initial thing was, we're going to take you off of Ritalin and we're going to try this antidepressant bipolar drug. Well, first of all, which 16-year-old is not hormonal and crazy? Explain that one to me. We all deserve to be on drugs in our teenage years as women, and, you know, with our hormones, we're a little crazy. Just a little. But he didn't figure out, as I was going through med after med after med, that it wasn't working for me. I would be on a med and be adjusting dosages for about 6 months to about a year per med kind of thing. And then we'd have to switch because it stopped being effective and working for me.
So was it that you were on effective medication for ADHD, got taken off it, and tried a whole different series of things, and none of them were working, and the doctor didn't go, well, let's go back to what was working previously?
Exactly. Yeah, no, he never went back to the Ritalin because back then, again, this is the 90s, right? So we outgrow attention deficit. We outgrow Ritalin at that point, right? There was no Concerta at that point. There was no Adderall. There was no other adult-friendly ADHD meds like there is on the market today, because being an adult and having, or even a late teen and having ADHD was unheard of at that point. They were still trying to figure out how it worked with kids and teens. So, my med journey stopped when I was 18.
It's that thing of like, there's a few approaches to ADHD. One of them is like ADHD coaching, of going like, here's some specific things that help you get through your day. Here's things about your neurology, and here are the things that you're going to struggle with, and let's understand it and work through them. And here's medication that also helps with that, and they work great in combination. And it's always that thing of like, you had the medication, they took that away from you, but you had nothing to backfill. Not coaching, not like the understanding, and again, not further medication.
Right. And bless my mom's heart, like she was fantastic. She was an advocate for me where no one else was. You know, and she tried her darndest to get us the help that we needed. But the therapists that she sent us to weren't versed in ADHD either. So their take on it was that there's, you know, behavioral issues or trauma past, or, you know, you're just being a teenager who's being a pain in the butt, you know, and whining about stuff. So that never helped really either. And, you know, at this time, I'm very active in my youth group, and I'm very active in our youth music team at church. And at this point, I'm starting to, because I wasn't medicated, you find out, you see a different side of me, in the sense that I wasn't the one that people wanted to be around because I was obnoxious. I was blurting stuff out. I was saying things that made sense in my brain, but didn't make sense in anybody else's brain. You know, I was highly emotional, and being on antidepressants didn't help that. I was oversensitive, always have been. I mean, I was bullied from the time I was 10 years old by one particular student until the end of grade 12, when we finally got out of class together. And my parents were effectively, in grade 11, finally sent a cease and desist letter to this kid. to say, if you do not stop bullying our daughter, you will be getting a call from the police. And I mean, really looking back now, you look at it, it's like, yeah, he was making fun of me, but it wasn't to the extent that some bullying goes. It was more of, I was just, at that point, an oversensitive kid. But now looking back, it's like, no, this is maybe RSD instead, like rejection sensitivity, whatever it is. That now looking with all the knowledge that we have, it's like, maybe I did suffer from that back then. But I figured out quickly, if I had the right teacher, I did well. If I didn't have the right teacher, I didn't even want to put the effort in, because I knew it was going to be a waste of my time, because they weren't going to help me. So the teachers that I did really well with, I got clingy with. The teachers that I didn't do well with, I wanted nothing to do with and would like stay far away from them in the school halls, right? That was kind of thing.
There's something about bullying, and I've got a bit of a question here, and like fair cop out as well. I was bullied at school as well, and I'm wondering, hearing your kind of callbacks, your memories, is there something in that heightened response that we as ADHDers have that makes us pleasant to bully, or something like that? Of like, you can just give us a little nudge, you can give us a little poke, and most people will just brush it off, but we give a elevated response to that, which makes us more prone to victimhood.
That emotional dysregulation that we all, if not majority of us have, seems to get triggered really, really easily. I mean, this kid started out just by calling me by my last name. That's all it was. He would just say, "Hey, Kerr, how are you? Hey, Kerr, how are you?" And, that bothered me. That really bothered. I don't know why, because it's my last name. It's like, it's not the biggest deal, but it bothered me. And it got so bad to the point that I had teachers sending me away for fake errands so they could talk to the class and tell them to knock it off. The other problem was, in this particular instance, is this kid was the principal's son. So no one dealt with him ever, because he was related to the principal. We were all happy at the end of grade 8. We're like, oh, good, he's going to Smithville. I don't have to deal with him. Like, there's 2 high schools that we could have gone to from this school. And it's like, oh, he's going to the other one. Thank God, I'm done. I'm free. Like, and then, midsummer, they decided he's going to the same high school, and we're going to carpool together. Like, oh my God.
What did you learn, and what would you change? I feel like there's a very definite answer there. But what else would you change?
Honestly, I don't know. I would, if I had a chance, I would change how I come across to people. But to this day, I still don't know how to change that. It takes a lot of thinking for me to kind of word answers properly, or make sure that I'm not saying things that are like out in left field. I mean, I have lost, I don't know about you, but I've lost a lot of friends over the years because I'm not neurotypical. I'm not your usual person. No. So for me to drone on and on and on about a subject past the time that something's happened is a common occurrence. Whereas for them, it's a one and done thing, and they don't harbor over it. The other thing, if I've learned anything, it's kind of the idea that I wish that we had stayed the course with meds. But knowing what I know now, I know that's not a possibility, because the world was not evolved enough in the study of ADHD. If I was doing it all over again today, like if I was a teenager now, I'd be fine. I'd have a world at my disposal. I was a trailblazer in a sense in the ADHD world.
Yeah, you were having ADHD before it was even available in women.
One other thing I also learned, just going back to that whole question, because, you know, ADHD boomerang, is that coffee is my medication of choice. If I don't have tea, if I don't have caffeine, if I don't have coffee, I don't function. And it still is my medication of choice to this day, because getting evaluated here, getting a specialist here, getting a family doctor here is almost next to impossible. So it's like, forget it. I don't have time.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do what's always worked for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Coffee is... Yeah, I'm literally drinking my coffee right now as we're talking. Love coffee. Love coffee. It's that thing of like, I did not like the taste when I first started, but those neurotransmitters that it gives you, it was that thing, and it was very quickly after I got over that taste, I've got like, I need this to function.
Yeah.
I'm thinking there's quite a few parents of ADHDers who listen to the podcast now as well, like people looking for kind of answers. Like, is there anything that was helpful for you as a kid growing up?
Yeah. So figuring out that I was a visual learner was huge. And so for me to kind of clue into the idea that if I draw it out, or eventually in college, if I wrote out the notes, you know, that I was taking, instead of just audio, like typing them out or anything, but if I wrote the little side comments that my professor would say that no one else thought had anything to do with the tests or the exams or whatever, then suddenly they would show up on the exams. You know, if I wrote those down, I actually remembered them. If I wrote out my study notes, I remembered them. If I drew out diagrams, I remembered it. If I just sat and read my notes and my stuff for school, it went out the window. Now, that being said, if I sit and read a book, I can, because I'm drawing it in my mind, it's a different story. Because it's fiction. I'm creating the world around me. It's not there in a picture book for me to figure out what they're telling me. And I'm one of those people that will look at a movie based on a book and will say, yeah, no, that's not right. That's not the world that I created.
Yeah, but you're not allowed to say that. I found that out as well. Like,
I know.
Like those, like all in, like, yeah. Once I went to university and started sharing my thoughts, going, well, this is bad, this doesn't match. And like in your 20s, people go, no. It's like, oh, other people are allowed different interpretations of the things I love. I suppose.
Yeah. For me, growing up, music and sports were my getaway. They were what grounded me, in a sense. They were my escape. And I became I learned how to play the flute in high school. And so for me to be able to play, I was constantly in the band room and wanting to learn harder pieces and new pieces. And then I was a figure skater growing up for 21 years. So to take that love of music and put it onto the ice was another way of being able to just escape reality. But of course, my obsession with those two things were a pain for everybody else to listen to all the time.
Yeah. I think there's that thing of like, I recently learned the term hyperlexia, which is about consuming books. You just read and read and read and read, and I recognize that. But I think there's something about, I'm thinking for parents of ADHDers, of saying like, these help us regulate our emotions, but sometimes they are potentially taken too far as well. It's that fine line of saying,
I'm a Disney nerd, huge Disney nerd, and that passion started when my parents took me to Disney when I was like 6 years old, and I still go to. I'm 43. I just went to Disney last year. Like, And I don't apologize for my love of
Yeah,
Disney.
yeah.
If you don't
Yeah,
like it, just walk away. Just go, because
yeah,
I'll start and I
yeah.
don't stop.
Yeah, no, I've got book series and I've got TV shows that I go back to year after year. I'm going like this is the thing. So like Farscape, which is a random Jim
Yeah.
Henson sci-fi series which no one watches, but that's just
Wait,
absolutely
Jim
brilliant.
Henson did that?
Yes, yeah, yeah. So it was like the Muppets guy, Jim Henson.
Yeah. I didn't
Yeah,
know
yeah.
that.
So
Now I'm going to have to watch that because I love the
he did
Muppets.
all the animations. It holds up so well because it's all animatronics, very little CGI.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
I'll have to
but
check that out.
I'm not. Yeah, but it is a hyper focus, so take it with a pinch of salt, my opinion.
Right, right.
um, but also like things like John Scalzi's space operas and things like that, like very much go back at them over and over again because they're helpful. They're regulating, they're calming as well when things are stressful.
Yeah. I
Mm,
think for parents to understand their kids,
mm,
I think my mom did it well in the sense
mm,
that she was an advocate for us.
mm,
Um, in this day and age, people are either on the, we can't vaccinate our kids, it's gonna
mm,
brainwash them or do whatever. We go from that to there's the other side of my kid is getting every vaccine and,
mm,
whatever else to I, to the parents who are worried about every little thing of their kids. And
mm,
I pose no offense to any parent out there. You do parenting your style. That's you.
mm,
We all parent differently. We were all parented differently growing up, and it's one of those things of it's nature versus nurture. We learn parenting skills from our parents,
mm,
and we learn it from observing others. But you need to be an advocate for your kids, because if my mom didn't step up for me, if my mom didn't fight for me, I would still be in the dark about my ADHD. I don't think I would have come across it independently in
mm,
college until later on, maybe. Um, and even now, as I sit and watch TikToks and social media,
mm.
I might be cluing into, yeah, this is something that might be affected me, instead of, yeah, that's totally me. I already know that. You're not telling me anything new.
Yeah, yeah.
I
I think
think advocacy is huge.
that's exactly the word I was thinking of as well. Like advocacy as a parent for
Mm-hmm.
neurodivergent kids, because it is difficult. It is one of my favorite words, ineffable. It's very hard to measure, like neurodifferences of saying like, are they exhibiting behaviors because of a neurological difference? Are they doing something different? Is there something else? And it's hard because people don't understand. It's hard because
Yeah.
people don't make judgment calls based on the behaviors they see, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to asking the questions about why the behaviors exist.
It's why some of these people that say, "Oh, everyone's a little ADHD," drive me batty. No,
Mm.
no, no. Yeah, sure. Everybody can have some hyperactive moments
Mm.
where they're bouncing off the walls, or
Uh-huh.
they just blurt something out. But you step a day in my
Mm.
shoes, and you realize how many times I interrupt a boss in the middle of a conversation
Mm.
because I already know where she's going, so I just blurt out the remainder of the conversation or the answer.
Mm.
Yeah, like, no, that's not normal. That's not a little bit of ADHD.
Mm.
That's a whole lot of ADHD.
Yeah, I think
I think I
it's
posted
that.
on Threads yesterday. Sorry,
Mm.
here we go. We're interrupting.
No.
I think I posted on Threads yesterday
Mm.
that I did some math yesterday
Mm.
of the fact that in the last 20 years of me working,
Mm-hmm.
because I didn't start till I was 23 because I wanted to get through school first, I think I've had 16 jobs in 20 years. Now, some of them were seasonal. So
Mm-hmm.
that was, short term, doesn't matter. So that was to be expected that they would end.
Mm-hmm.
But others I've either lost or left because either A, I didn't like the job anymore. I didn't like the boss. It was too stressful. It was too much for me. Or B, it was I was fired because I don't play well with others. And that's a common thing with ADHDers. And if you as a parent are noticing that your kid is not playing well with others, it's time to stop blaming the other kid and maybe think,
Yeah.
Maybe there's something that we need to look into.
It's making me think of a fact, and I don't like this fact, but it's kind of coming up, which is ADHD kids have a much higher percentage of one-way friendships than neurotypical kids. So essentially, they don't have the friendships that they give out return back to them. And how on earth can you support that? Which is just horrible.
I don't like the fact either, but I've read that recently as well, and it resonates wholeheartedly with me because there's very few give and take relationships that I have. I'm single because I can't be bothered to have a give and take relationship with someone who's not willing to help me. I can't do a romantic relationship. It's not my thing. It's too much and I get bored too easily. So I can't stay in one. But it's true. The one-sided relationships where I am constantly working on a relationship or trying to, how do I word it? Trying to make sure that I don't become irrelevant with the person. I think is probably not necessarily the right wording, but kind of how it feels, where you're trying to make sure that they know you're still there. That they don't forget about you. And it's interesting because I often say to myself, what's the point of having this friendship when I'm the only one doing the work?
Yeah.
And it's true. There are people, there are relationships that I have where I'm the one texting all the time. I'm the one calling all the time. I'm the one, doing all the work. And they're just like, cool, I'll call you when I want. And, I don't understand that concept of not calling right away.
Yeah. I think there is something, and I don't know because I'm not neurotypical and I don't understand it. And I know that with the majority of my friends, I text first, and I will follow, and I will chase things up, and I will be that thing of trying to add value. And I think there's almost that in my head. I get the value from the friendship itself, of the connection that's formed, and then I try to do things for other people because I get all this value just from you being around. And so I wonder if there's something in there to ask the neurotypicals. Maybe we'll do an episode in the future and go, what do you mean by this?
Yeah. Well, and you think about it, like my bullying experience, for example, and I'm sure it eventually will come out that most of ADHDers were bullied as a child. And, my experience though, as I look at it, it's like, I couldn't maintain any relationships because of things I said. Yeah, I know I was bullied because of something that foot and mouth disease thing again. It just came out and you can't take it back. I worked in the camp world for 10 years. So I was a camp director for over 10 years, which is actually a great place for neurodivergents to work because it's always exciting. You're being creative all the time. And if you look in the camp world, you'll probably find that 8 or 9 out of 10 of us have some sort of neurodivergence, whether it be autism or ADHD, we all have it. But I look at that and I think about, in the camp world, it's constantly one of those things where you think about, there's a metaphor that we use and teach our staff. It's like, there's a toothpaste. You have a tube of toothpaste.
Mm-hmm.
and you get your staff to squeeze everything out of that toothpaste, or it could be a tube of paint or whatever. And then you ask your staff to try to put it back in.
Mm-hmm.
And we use this analogy and we say, this is how words hurt. We take
Yeah.
words come out of our mouth. We can say whatever we darn well want, but we can't take it back.
Mm.
And we can't put it back in the tube neatly the way it was. So there's always
Yeah.
some sort of mess left behind. And you don't necessarily see the mess because we clean up the mess, but you don't realize that there's still that sticky layer of toothpaste underneath the cleaning solution.
Yeah.
Or, you know, there's a little glob still left on your toothbrush. So we as neurotypicals don't necessarily have control over what we say or how we say it or what we do or what we think. But we also don't understand or comprehend the mess that we've left behind because our brain doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Apart from when it does as well, that thing of I can obsess over a comment, a passing comment that no one meant anything by, of going, oh no, and that's where the RSD comes in. I'm ruminate on it sometimes, but also sometimes like someone go, they were really mean to you. I'm like, were they? I've completely forgotten that conversation already.
I had someone reach out to me from my grade school years because I had COVID, the whole COVID lockdowns here and everything, that isolation made everybody think about caring, right? And, you know, made everybody think about, oh, you know, we don't see anybody anymore, so we need to take care of ourselves. And I'm a huge advocate for self-care and doing stuff for self-care because that's the only way I can get through life if I'm frustrated or upset or something. And I had someone reach out to me during that time because I had posted something about my struggles over the years and that on Facebook. And she's like, I was really nasty to you. And I'm really sorry. And it's like, okay, I don't remember any of that, but sure. I accept your apology. Like, sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I think of like, we remember the bad times, but also we sometimes don't as well. That thing of like, I don't know how the memories work and how you can choose to remember I think the good things as well. I think there's that thing of we forget so much of the good as well.
Yeah.
I
I'm going to
with
issue
that.
a trigger warning here. There's a bit of a trigger warning here to do with loss and death. So it could trigger anybody that listens. But I was told, my mom died suddenly when I was 28. I was in school getting ready for second semester. My mom passed away right away, 2 days before semester started. And I had a rough semester. Still don't know how I passed with a 3.5 GPA. Haven't figured that one out. And how I almost became valedictorian. Still haven't figured that one out. But that's okay. I got through it. But someone mentioned to me, about a year after, because, you know, with a sudden loss like that, you don't get a chance to really process it as someone who's potentially ill and taking a long illness and slowly going downhill. You get to kind of look at it like, okay, you know what? I need to prepare myself. They're not going to be here much longer. And someone said it to me. They're like, do you want to be known as Jenn, who, you know, has survived the loss of a mother and, you know, has moved on in life and doing well? Or do you want to be known as Jenn, my mother died? And it's like, I never thought of it that way. It's hard for me to move past that grief as someone who doesn't process feelings and emotions properly. But, you know, we talk about how we hold on to those feelings and, you know, we remember and ruminate over those things that were said to us as a kid, like that, hence why that bullying is still fresh in my head. But in this case, like, grief is one of the hardest things for an ADHDer to get over. At least in my journey, I find that I look back at it every day and I look at all the memories that my friends are having with their parents, and it's like, boom, instant trigger. And it's
Yeah.
like, I can't get over this because I can't be doing that with my mom, or I can't be doing this with my dad. And it's like, oh, get over yourself. It's been 10 years already. Like,
But
but
it hasn't.
it is,
It hasn't. I think it's that thing of saying, like, when like out of sight, out of mind thing, we struggle. It's that thing of like you're not processing all the time. Like it's that thing of like your parents could still be there in the back of your head
yeah.
just because you haven't seen them, and then that reminder comes in or something happens, you go, I'm straight back to 10 years ago.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And again, going back to that parent link that we've been talking about on and off throughout this episode or interview, is like, this is where if something's bothering your kids, like you're going to know, first of all, you're going to trigger into the little warning signs that you're seeing, but help your kids to process. Don't try to get them to get over it. Like, they did you wrong, you know what, whatever. It's no big deal. They said that you were silly or that your feet stank or what. Like, little things like that stick with us for life. Like, parents need to help their kids talk about it and process it. If they can't, then they need to get someone that does, because there's too many kids that are neurodivergent and not able to process properly, that are being forgotten about, and then eventually they take a very dark path, and that's not the right thing for those kids either.
No.
Right? Like, so parents need, not only do parents need to advocate for their kids, but they also need to help their kids process things, because we can't do it normally. We don't have that ability.
Yeah. And I think there's something about saying as well, if you have neurodivergent kids, there is a high likelihood that you're also neurodivergent, and you also might be lacking in some of these skills as well. And also, even if you're neurotypical, you might be lacking some of these skills as well, because neurodivergent support is difficult, and asking for help and going outside of yourself, of saying, actually, I can't do this as a parent, I need to help. I think there's something for parents of neurodivergence listening of saying there isn't shame in that. There shouldn't be shame in that. And
No.
it would be a much better world for your kids growing up to have that, regardless of where it comes from as well.
Yeah, absolutely. If my mom wasn't the person that she was, who had a light bulb moment to say, I think there's a problem here, we need to figure this out, I probably wouldn't have graduated high school without, my father literally dragging me into it every day. But, like, I wouldn't be where I am today because I started figuring out slowly how my brain works and how my brain ticks, because she gave me the tools through the books that she read. I also then read the books when I got older to kind of figure stuff out. And, she encouraged me to do my thing, and to be who I was. But she also taught me along the way, hey, you can't say stuff like that. You need to really think about what you say before you speak, because you just blurt stuff out. And I mean, I was a frustrating child. I was a frustrating teen. Don't get me wrong. I know that for a fact. But my parents were the kind of people that kind of looked outside the regular normal hormonal imbalance of a teenager and thought, no, there's something else here, And my dad and I didn't, once my mom passed, my dad and I just didn't get along, because again, we're like oil and water, the exact same people. We're carbon copies. So we both, all the way growing up, we were very much at each other's throats. Like, homework with him was impossible for me. There's no way I was getting through science homework with my dad. The second I decided that after grade 10 I wasn't taking science anymore, his heart broke into a million pieces. Because, he's the engineer. um, but my dad always said something that still sits with me today. And it wasn't the nicest thing in the world. But it's still something that makes me go back and think about what I say is like, well, you're just making stuff up now. And that's a true thing of a lot of us get told as ADHDers that we're making stuff up. But we're really not. Like, our reality may be a little different than everybody else's, but the stuff we say, because we're very much all about the fairness and the rules and all that stuff. When we tell you that Billy Bob is actually telling these things to us, or saying stuff to us, or not doing their work, we're not making that crap up. It's actually happening. You're just not noticing. You're ignoring it. And so for us, that's like a dagger when you don't believe us, and we look at it like, well, why would I say anything anymore? Because it's not going to change. I might as well just keep my mouth shut.
That is reminiscent of my childhood, reminiscent of my experience as well. It's absolutely that thing of that lack of belief of saying, well, you should just grin and bear it. You shouldn't be bothered by it. And you go, actually, you can see your child is bothered by that. You can see your partner is bothered by that. Why would you dismiss those feelings? Why would you say, oh, you're struggling with this, I'm going to turn it back into your problem? Oof.
Like I said, ADHD is a roller coaster.
What joy has ADHD brought to you?
My creative mind. I'm able to think outside the box. I'm able to put together things that most people wouldn't be able to comprehend right away. So in the camp world, for example, the ideas that came across for our all group activities kind of thing, for me, I would borrow some from fellow camp directors, because why reinvent the wheel if it's already existing? I'm going to take the easy way out if I can sometimes. But like, there's other times where I've come up with programming and events, and it's like, it's all, there's some semblance of it, but it's taken a different twist because my brain can see ahead 3 steps and see the twists that I can put in there. I think the other thing that ADHD has done for me that I probably wouldn't have thought about, or most people don't think about with, in regards to ADHD, because they see the inattentive and the hyperactivity and, they don't see certain nuances. But I am one of those people that can plan your trip for you like no tomorrow. I can tell you step by step. Okay, you're going to get off the plane in Vancouver. You're going to go down to the lower floor and get your luggage at the luggage bay. Then you're going to go up to level 2 and catch the Sky Train and take the Sky Train to your hotel down. Like, I can plan it for you and give you a written outline of exactly how you're going to get places. And my clients love it because I can give them details about certain trips, like that a lot of people don't take the time to do. They're like, here's your tickets, here's your hotel booking, here's this. Now go figure it out on your own how you're going to get around. They don't take that. Whereas if I know, say you're going to Vancouver, for example, you don't have to rent a car at the airport if you don't want to. There's lots of public transportation and it's very easy to get around. Let me show you. Or, hey, you're going to Disney. You're going to go do, all these rides. Let me show you how to maximize your time in Disney so that you are not spending 4 hours in a lineup for one ride, So those kind of things, because I've been able to devour the knowledge base that's there and put my own experience in it and think outside the box, those are things that I'm very grateful for. The hyper focus thing is fantastic some days. Not other days, but most days, hyper focus is fantastic. Because we now have a knowledge base that most people don't have.
So, if you think back to 16-year-old Jenn, what advice would you give her?
This is a moment that doesn't last forever. Take what you can, absorb the knowledge and the information that you're getting. Keep connected with the people that made you feel safe. Looking now, there is still one teacher. There would probably be a couple more if I could actually connect with them if they were on social media, but there's still one teacher that I talk to on a regular basis. We are still good friends, and I graduated high school 25 years ago. So, these are things that it's like, all right, take advantage of the friendships that you have, but make sure you don't know what's going to happen in a decade or two.
That's great. Really good. So, Jenn, now we're just going to take a moment. What have we learned today? I don't know if we've learned anything. I said that last time as well. Last time I asked this question.
I think we have learned something, though. We've learned that no journey is similar, but at the same time, we all have dealt with similar type experiences. So many of us have probably dealt with bullying in our time, but didn't really realize that why we experience bullying. Or many of us have experienced the nuances of trying to figure out how to learn this stuff. We've all had to figure out how to comprehend what we're learning in school and what we're learning in the business world and what we're learning in the real world. So we've come up with these devices, mnemonics, whatever you want to call them, to learn. And we've all had to do that on our own in a sense, because no one we all may think similarly, but we don't actually learn the same way. Everybody learns differently. So, each ADHD journey, while on the same similar path in the sense of we all have neurodivergence, we all have issues with emotional dysregulation or RSD, or maybe some of us are autistic. We all have different parts of the spectrum, but our journey is probably very more similar than we actually think.
Yes. Yeah. As you were talking, it's that thing of we start this ADHD journey together before we're born, and then life hits us and we go along those same streets, and it might be a street over from where my experience was, but you're right there alongside me going, I'm feeling the same things in a different situation and having the same experience and having to work it out for myself as well on those things.
Yeah, it's very much, again, trigger warning, it's very much like a grief journey. ADHD, because everyone experiences grief at some point in their life, usually multiple times. I once said to a therapist, I've been to more funerals than I've been weddings in my life, which is still true today. Been to more funerals than I've been to weddings, and I'm okay with that. Because my grief journey took some sudden highs and lows. It's like a roller coaster again, high, low, sudden stops, turns. Your grief journey might have been a little bit more easygoing. You haven't suffered those major losses yet, but eventually you're going to see what I've dealt with, but at a different time period in your life. ADHD, we've all highs, lows, mediums. We might have really good parental advocates. We might have people who are willing and able to bend over backwards to get us the help we need. Maybe you didn't, but you then became your own advocate. You became a self-advocate for what you need. And, we all arrive at this same place together. It's just each of us take a different path to get there.
Yeah.
Sorry, I went deep there.
No. I'm sat here without and you can't see me with the camera, and I'm just like sat there going, that hit hard. That's going on the social medias, Jen. That's going to go in the advert.
There we go.
I think there's something, and I don't know if it made it into one of the other episodes, but it's there's a few things, isn't there? But there's one that's jumping out to me, which is ADHD is saying sorry for who you are for the entirety of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And about being too much for others, and going, why? And then that grief that comes in, and it's that grief, that very physical grief of people that you've lost, and also that grief of what could have been as well.
It's not an easy road. You know, everyone looks at it like, oh, you're just hyperactive, or you can't have, growing up, you can't have brown pop, you can't have caffeine, you can't have any of this stuff because it exacerbates it. The people who tell me what I can and cannot have need to get the heck out of it, because only I can know what's going to work for my brain and my body.
Yes.
We see, all of us see these posts on TikTok and social media and Facebook and everything of, manage your ADHD by being a little bit more productive by doing this. You need to take this step every day and this step every day. And it's like, do you have ADHD? Do you actually live this life? Or are you pretending for the world to make a buck? Because if you have ADHD, then maybe you would realize that this only maybe works for you and not the entire commune of people who suffer from it.
Yeah.
And I think the false advertising out there about how everyone is the same with ADHD, it's like, no. For me to keep my house clean, the doom piles have to be hidden somewhere. No.
Yeah. It's, my memory's gone. That's not too bad. After an hour, finally had a disassociation. Oh my gosh, what was I going to say? It was related. It was insightful. Insert the insightful thing here. What was
You'll
it?
remember 2 hours from now.
Oh yeah, I'll put it in post edit. It'll be fine. I think that was it. It was that point when I was like, I need to mention that, but I didn't want to talk over you. The purpose of the podcast of calling it "This is ADHD" is kind of a finger up to people who say this is ADHD, because it's not one thing. It is this collection of all these different things, and it's only by talking to other people and seeing the overlaps and seeing the different experiences that you can really say this is ADHD, because my ADHD is different to yours, is different to Nicola's, and different to Chris's, different to Thomas's, and yet they're the same, and we are more similar to each other than we are different.
Absolutely. And, the more I hear people say to me, you're just making it up. You don't have ADHD. Yeah, you live a day in my brain. You try to figure out why the Macarena is going on in the background while I have 15,000 other tabs going at the same time. Like, I can jump from subject to subject like that. But I don't have ADHD. Sure. Yeah. Okay.
And that is it for today's episode of This is ADHD. I do really want to thank Jen for joining me today. It's never a simple thing to kind of agree to talk in public, and some of the topics on this episode were really close to the bone, really personal, really deep. So thank you, Jen. Really, could not do this without you. Editing these episodes, for me, it's like listening to them all over again. It's like I'm not even in them in the recording. Thank you, working memory. I hope that you find Jenn's story as interesting and as thought-provoking as I have. Their journey with ADHD has been filled with challenges and triumphs. It has worked because of constant adaptation, finding strategies that work for her, and having the courage to seek support when needed. It's all been about advocacy early in life and getting the support. It's about embracing your own unique perspective and advocating for understanding and empathy from others. If you want to reach out to Jenn as well, you can find them on social media. They're on Threads. Their Threads handle is Jenn Kerr 2280. Be sure to give them a follow. They are always funny and interesting, and that's where I met them. If you enjoyed the episode, do please share this. This is going to be the last one for a couple of weeks at least. If you have people that are going to be interested in ADHD, potentially have been recently diagnosed, or have got family members or employees with ADHD, it's meant for people like that, people like me, people like you, to just understand what we mean by ADHD. You can also follow the podcast on Instagram and Threads. If you search for the handle, This is ADHD Podcast. This is where you'll find updates, polls, and opportunities to engage with fellow listeners. And if you want to talk to me personally, you can find me on Instagram, and you can find me on Threads, and you can find me on LinkedIn. Just search for The Coaching Blacksmith. That is my change coaching business. If you have any suggestions for future episodes, or you know a guest that just would be great, do feel free to reach out. When I hear feedback about this, it really does make it all worthwhile. So please, get in touch. At the time that I'm recording this outro, I don't quite know who's going to be on the next episode. I've got 3 or 4 people kind of in conversations, and they're all interesting, and I'm really looking forward to starting those conversations. As ever, thank you for joining me on this episode of This is ADHD. Until next time, remember, you gotta fight for your right to ADHD.